It depends on where you are in the country. It's a very large country.
Yeah.
Each region has like a completely different cuisine.
Yeah,
But generally, everything has like rice, beans, some kind of protein like beef or pork or chicken or whatever.
Yeah.
And something on the side and a salad. That's like the most general.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna say hi to everyone tuning into the live stream. This is the pre-live, so I'm on video Discord voice chat with Pedro Marsbach and Under Unicorn, two crew members. Pedro is
Hello.
a crew member who has worked on this show as well. And we're just chatting. We'll start the actual live stream in 20 minutes. We got some music playing for you guys. So I was surprised to find out, and I spent some time on like countrytruesize.com or whatever that site is called. I
love that website.
Yeah, that Brazil is actually the size of the United States, and I was not aware of that.
Yeah, it's like 5th largest country in the world, something like that.
Yeah.
But answering your question, I'm from the South, so we really like barbecues here in the South.
Yeah,
that's like the most common thing.
Do you guys do fish a lot in the seaside areas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I live in an island. People do like eating fish here in this part.
Oh, cool. It's like what fish are swimming out there in the South Atlantic?
Okay. I don't know about that. I'm not that good in like knowing that stuff. No, I'm not a fisherman. My father loves fishing, but I never got that knowledge from him.
Welcome to our Iowa. I have my download has completed. I'm going to review these tomorrow. These are Emily auditions from Amy Seville, our South African voice actress, who we have A-listed right now.
Yeah, she's really good.
Yeah, she's also the one who sang for all the cats listening. She's the one who sang most of the music. Everything that's now been done by Rachel Hardy is Amy.
Did you say she was South African?
Yeah, she's South African.
Oh, that's interesting. Didn't know that.
We're pretty much all over.
All over the world.
All over the world, yeah.
We're doing a secret project now with Jordan Fennell, as you guys know. There's some stuff on the Patreon live stream that we did with him.
Oh.
And I was surprised to find out that Jordan is actually a second generation. So he was born in America, but both his parents are Belgian. So he has a Belgian passport. So he's actually the closest thing to a Belgian that I've worked with for the past maybe 6 years. Like I've worked with every nationality except Belgians. I've never worked with Belgians. Actually, no. Did Carles do some work for us earlier this year? No, wait, Carles. No, wait, Carles.
I was about to say, didn't you go to like that you did that video where you drove out to that place to get some equipment?
Yeah, but Inyas is Algerian.
Oh.
You see a problem?
Right.
And Carles, the animator, he's from Barcelona. But these guys live in Belgium, of course.
Yeah.
But no, I do very little. Obviously, Belgium is a small country, so it's hard to do something and like not cross the border. But I do very little work with actual Belgian people. Our team right now has a lot of Danes in it. A lot of Danes and a lot of Swedes. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, obviously, at the heart of this project, ultimately, it all comes from Kaiserreich, and Kaiserreich all comes from being a mod for a Scandinavian game. So I think that's probably.
I don't think that's ever. I don't think I would ever consider sort of the community to be Scandinavian based. If we look at our YouTube, for example, you can see that we have a very strong, so a lot of viewers from the US, Australia, the United Kingdom, and then it's sort of evenly divided all over.
Yeah, there's no, other than them, there's no like specific things. It's all that's interesting.
To those wondering whether, we know you guys again in the US.
We're a worldwide network.
This is our pre-live thing, so we're just chatting on Discord, waiting for the actual time to begin.
Yeah. Just chilling.
As my father taught me, the best way to be on time is to be early. That's
yes.
So we just start to stream 50 minutes early. We just chat.
I live by the idea that 5 minutes early is bang on time. That's how I live. I got that drilled into me while I was in cadets. We were always told, 5 minutes early is on time. Always be there 5 minutes early.
Yeah.
Which cadets did you serve with, by the way? Which cadets did you serve with? Which branch?
It was the Combined Cadet Force, and we were actually, our school was the first ever REME CCF, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. We were the first ever one. So I was one of the first Lance Corporals of the first REME CCF.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that served with the cadets in Canada, either like Air Force cadets or Navy cadets, Army cadets.
I still think to this day the best decision I ever made was joining the cadets, and the worst decision I ever made was leaving it. Like, it was a brilliant time.
Cool. How long did you serve?
Well, I did it from year 9 to about halfway through year 11, so about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
But typically you'd do a little bit longer than that. But those like 2 odd years were best. Oh, so much stuff happened. It's brilliant. I can't, I could spend hours talking about it.
Yeah,
it's really, really brilliant.
What I think, we have a lot of active service in the community right now. We were chatting to Anonymous in the Patreon chat yesterday. Like he's serving in Korea right now, and I think there's definitely a couple others.
Yeah. And mad respect to all of them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually considering doing like a veterans discount on the web shop. It's something that I've received 1 or 2 emails before, but not many, and I keep forgetting. I should check. I know it's a custom for a US web shop to do that, so I'll check. I'll look into that a bit more.
Yeah, well, that's just that's a US. I mean, in stores in the US, that's just like a thing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think it's a good thing. It's one of those American things I actually agree with.
No, well, who was it that was planning on serving in the submarine force of the UK? It was one of us, one of the crew.
I cannot tell you. I don't know. That's the first time I'm hearing of that, so I don't think I've spoken.
It was really cool. I mean, I would love to serve. They're Tridents, right? The submarines.
Trident is the specific. They're our nuclear submarines. They're our submarines with the nukes.
Okay.
And no one, even the people that are operating the submarines, don't know where they are because they're like blindfolded when they're brought in. But the thing that annoys me about that is the Yanks have our codes. We don't even have our own codes. The Yanks have them. But other than that,
just a quick hello to everyone from the Pacific States and Texas in the chat that are signing up. You know what was cool when you had those like the Cold War bombers? Like they didn't know what their plans were, so they were just like fly on this vector, and if something goes down and you lose like radio contact, like there's like a locked safe in your bomber, open it, and like that's your target. You need to go nuke that city or whatever is on that paper.
That's so Cold War, isn't it? That is so Cold War.
Like the level of paranoia was crazy. Like imagine all these what were they?
Well, that's the plot of Doctor Strangelove, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. You guys have watched that movie, right? That movie is great.
Yeah. It is a masterpiece, isn't it?
We have some vets and active service in the chat as well. We have US Air Force represented.
Yeah.
You know what to say? Don't join the army. No, don't join the Marines is what they say. I watched this very interesting documentary that basically was about a guy who talked about the different branches of service in the US, and he said like, yeah, join the army or the Air Force. Don't join the Marines.
Yeah. Well, the US Marines, obviously, they have, I don't know if you'd call it a stigma. They're definitely very, there's a bit of a stereotype about US Marines being this basically Full Metal Jacket. Like, if you've seen the film Full Metal Jacket, that's pretty much the entire world's perception of the US Marines.
Okay, I get that.
So, Royal Marines are, no.
I'm not sure where I heard this, but it is said that the world's largest was it Air Force? Like the world's largest Air Force or Navy or Army was the U.S. Army, and the second largest was the U.S. Marines.
Yeah.
Because if you count them as separate branches, then it would be like a separate military.
Yeah.
So it's pretty hilarious.
It is quite amusing.
Anyway, guys, to everyone in live chat, we will start the live stream in 5 minutes. We're just randomly chatting. I'm gonna make sure everyone.
Didn't the Pepsi company have for a while like the largest Navy?
Yeah, because of the way exchange rates worked outside of the Soviet Union, the Soviet ruble was completely worthless. And I think it was either Khrushchev or Brezhnev wanted to import loads of Pepsi because they tried it at a convention and they really blooming liked it. So they were like, we want to buy like as much Pepsi. We want to make Pepsi the official drink of the Soviet Union. And obviously Pepsi wants that. But as I say, rubles were worthless outside the Soviet Union. So the way they did it is they got all these World War II Soviet era ships that were just sitting around and they evaluated their worth in scrap metal. And it equaled about what Pepsi wanted. So the Soviets transferred the Navy to this old World War II fleet to PepsiCo. And so for that month window of time, where they were negotiating with scrappers like to sell all the ships for scrap, Pepsi had, I think it was the 8th largest navy on the planet.
That is the content we're
I've
here
heard
for.
that story before. Yeah, it was a pretty fascinating.
Probably
story.
Brezhnev or Gorbachev. Probably.
Yeah, I think it was late.
By the point that the Soviet economy was collapsing, probably.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, the reason the ruble was worthless outside the Soviet Union is because, communism.
Yeah.
Something tells me it was Khrushchev, but I know it was in the 80s, so it can't be Khrushchev because Khrushchev left in 64.
There's about the end of the Soviet Union and like the arms sale and the wild stuff that happened there. I still think that Lord of War or Warlord with Nicolas Cage is like a really
Lord of
War.
That's a
It's
great
not
movie.
not a historical movie by any means, but it's just an extremely entertaining movie. It's one of those few movies that I watch every other year, I would say. By the way, we have Meadow in the chat. Meadow, are you listening?
I am. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yes, we can hear you excellently.
Hello, everybody.
To all our cats tuning in, Meadow is, of course, Tom Black, the author of The People's Flag, the world's first Kaiserreich book. And actually, I'm going to start this live stream off by giving a little promotion. The People's Flag is available on Amazon, Tom, still?
It sure is, yes. And other outlets as well. sealionpress.co.uk. And then if you look at our books, you can find it there as well.
There we go.
If we just whack in The People's Flag, Tom Black into Google, that can take you to a Sea Lion Press page, which will give you all the other places you can get it, but you can certainly find it on Amazon as well.
I'm going to switch to screen share, so if anything weird happens, here we go. Welcome, cats. You will be able to see me now. Let me know if the audio is good. We're just doing a quick intro with Tom Black. Tom, you're here because you were, of course, also the author of this episode of the Kaiserreich documentary.
That's right. Thank you very much indeed for first for your kind words about the People's Flag, and also for approaching me to do this. It was so incredibly exciting to hear that firstly this was happening, and also it was incredibly flattering that you felt I had anything approaching the skills necessary to make what you had sound like a documentary. Because it's great. Who doesn't want to graduate from writing books about fake history to writing documentaries about fake history?
So, Tom, you not only wrote to the People's Flag for Kaiser, you also do several other old historical projects because you run you run Sea Lion Publishing, right?
That's right. Sea Lion Press is my baby, though it wouldn't be where it was without various other people who helped me get it off the ground, and indeed the now something like 60 or 70 authors that we have. But yes, I founded it in 2015 primarily with Jack Tyndale, our fantastic illustrator who made the very iconic cover for People's Flag and virtually all of our other books as well. He's a fantastic graphic artist.
Yeah, definitely. So if you guys are interested in seeing more of Tom's work, The People's Flag, as you can see here, is available on Amazon. Also check out Sea Lion Press, which is Tom's company. Which
we've got about 110 books now on sale from all kinds of eras, back to the classical world, into the future, and everywhere in between.
Might have to swing by those other titles. So I've read the people's flag. And the one thing that I thought was interesting about it is sort of 2/3 of the way in, you spent some time talking about the Second American Civil War.
Yes, everyone loves that.
Yeah, at that point, I felt like these was planned to be 2 books, but you ended up merging them into 1 book. Is that correct?
Do you know what? It's not quite like that. I don't know enough about the Second American Civil War and also like American history in general. Obviously, I am British, in case that's not obvious from my voice.
You're British.
That's obviously why I did the UOB and was fascinated with that. I did, however, I admit, when I was writing the fake Noam Chomsky written chapter, which is who officially in the books world wrote the chapter about the American Civil War. When I was writing it, I really, really did get into the swing of things, and I did love it a great deal. And I don't know, I won't surprise you that in the kind of canon that I had in my head for what was going to happen across the rest of the 20th century, that I had plans for what was going to happen to what is in our timeline the biggest and most important country on earth. And so, yeah, there was a plan in my head for where I was going to go with it, and who doesn't want to mess around with what's going to happen in America. So it did get much beefier and longer as a chapter.
Yeah, that does make sense.
I hope you enjoyed it. It's kind of, even at the time, it was a little bit off-piste from the canon of the day, but that's the canon of about 2011 in the Kaiserreich world. And I know it's had about 15 million reworks since then.
On average. So you were one of the first, earliest generation. I think you're second generation Kaiserreich developer.
I would say I'm second generation of the earliest, possibly third generation. That depends. I don't know really how you divide up the generations, but yeah, there was. I didn't even interact with with people like Samasha. I never met him or chatted to him. It was already a bunch of guys who were trying to carry on with the mod by the time I helped out, and I didn't do a huge amount. I want to stress that.
Well, especially those early Hearts of Iron 2 days, and I was only a lurker then in the forums. I did Kaiserreich after action reports, and I only joined the team much later when Hearts of Iron 4 released.
Right.
What's interesting is that nobody has seen or heard of Sarmasha, and we haven't been able to contact him yet. So I'm thinking of doing some kind of another documentary series, which is actually like, how was Kaiserreich made? Where we track down the original team members and have them talk about Kaiserreich as a mod. So this is what we know, and you can correct me on this, Tom, because this is more like lore that's been passed down. Because the actual beginning of Kaiserreich has been forgotten. So early 2000s, right? Sarmasha is writing an after action report. For those of you who were not around during those days. After action reports were basically sort of fiction, fan art, and lore you would write around games you played in Hearts of Iron. So Sarmasha wrote one that was called All the Russias, and it was basically about Russia in 1936, but he had modded the world slightly because it was set after a German victory in World War I. And then it was a Russian mod originally. And then things grew from there, so people started working on it, and then I'm not sure who came up with the name Kaiserreich, but that's how it became a mod, and then sort of grew from there.
I think that's broadly right. I think, and again, other people may well correct me on this, I think the only correction I'd give is that the original All the Russias mod, I think you're right, it probably did begin as an AAR that very quickly people were like, dude, this is great, release it, let's make it into a mod. It originally was otherwise OTL. It was like the Whites won the Russian Civil War, but Germany still lost the First World War. And because I have a memory, I think I played it, or I've watched some AARs of it, or read some AARs. None of this YouTube series of people playing Hearts of Iron back then. And I think, anyway, they were like, Hitler was in charge of Germany and so on. I think it was otherwise the same. And then Kaiserreich was the next step, obviously a huge step to go like, well, let's take this existing relatively layered White Russia has won content, Kerensky gets assassinated. Kerensky has officially been getting assassinated for more than 15, 16 years now. It is the most consistent thing. It was in Kaiserreich before there was Kaiserreich.
That's actually actually brilliant.
But I believe, originally it was just an OTL setting with different Russia, and then it quite quickly people were like, well, let's take this to the next step. And Samasha was very involved in that as well.
Yeah, well, we should try and track him down because he has not been active on any Kaiserreich channel ever since. But the way I see it is, so first generation would be the very first people who with Samasha worked on the After Action report. The second generation would be the people who joined when the project was officially called Kaiserreich and moved into Darkest Tower. The third generation was the ill-fated Hearts of Iron 3 modification.
Yes, that's fair. I'm second generation then, under that definition.
The fourth generation would be everyone joining during Hearts of Iron 4, but even in Hearts of Iron 4, there are 2 phases, so I would even go as far as to say there's a 4th and a 5th generation in there, and then I would consider Kaiserreich Cinema to be the 6th generation, because we're actually moving away from the mod and bringing it back to media where it originally started, like lore and fiction and stuff. So we've made this really, really weird loop back onto itself, and I think that's pretty fascinating. Anyway, it is 23 in the Central European time zone, so I promised you guys I would premiere Chomsky live on this channel, so that is what we will do. I suggest that we do we just watch a full episode together. I'm going to mute myself, everyone is going to mute himself, and I will disappear from your screen. We will watch the full episode together, then we will do a afterwards Q&A. We'll be talking to Pedro Marsbach, the animator of this episode, and we'll be talking to Tom Black. I think Gabriel is also going to show up in 30 minutes. He's still eating. He helped co-author the script with Tom Black. Patrick Warner, the voice actor, could not make it tonight. He had other plans. But Patrick, if you're out there listening afterwards, thanks for the great work. We're super excited, and the community definitely did a solid in voting you as the narrator for this series. That is it. I am going to mute myself, guys, and I will see you in a minute. All right, everyone mute.
As German troops marched through Paris, the guns on the Western Front had finally fallen silent. The horrors of the Great War, which claimed over 30 million lives and wrought havoc upon all of Europe, had ended. The German Empire had triumphed utterly. That morning, the world awoke to a new age. The age of the Kaiserreich. January 1917. Wilhelm II, Kaiser of the German Empire, holds a council with his military advisors. These councils are regular, but this one will bring about a decision that changes the course of the war. High-ranking military officials, including the head of the Imperial Naval Office, von Kappel, join Chancellor von Bethmann-Hollweg in urging the Kaiser not to resume unrestricted submarine warfare in the Atlantic Ocean, fearing the inevitable attacks on American shipping will draw the United States into the war on the Allied side. The opponents of unrestricted submarine warfare brace themselves for defeat when Erich Ludendorff argues in the strongest possible terms that unrestricted submarine warfare should be resumed. The previous year, this Prussian son of minor nobility had been raised to the rank of General Quartiermeister, a new role placing him in command of the German army's logistics and supply. In reality, the role was far more powerful, and Ludendorff was on track to become de facto dictator of all things military, in a duumvirate with Chief of the German General Staff, Paul von Hindenburg. It was perhaps this obvious desire for power that made the Kaiser wary of increasing Ludendorff's influence further. Had he been given the apparent authority to override the German Navy's own wishes, there would have been little standing in the way of his and Hindenburg's total dominance of the German state. Wilhelm, seeing this, decides to act. After no more than a few minutes, the die is cast. The Kaiser has decided against resuming unrestricted submarine warfare. The decision will only delay, not prevent, the rise of Ludendorff and Hindenburg to supreme authority within the empire. But while it sacrifices the chance to starve Britain out of the war, it near eliminates the risk of the United States declaring war on Germany herself. The United States must be neutral in fact as well as in name during these days that are to try men's souls. We must be impartial in thought as well as in action, must put a curb upon our sentiments as well as upon every transaction that might be construed as a preference of one party to the struggle before another. Woodrow Wilson, 28th President of the United States. Wilson spoke for many Americans who wanted the United States to stay out of any conflict. But there was a darker and deeper reason behind US non-interventionism. As early as the mobilization of 1914, agents of the Abteilung 3B, the Germans' elusive spy agency, had been infiltrating the highest rungs of US political life. Moving through the swathes of German expats and immigrants on the northeast, their single aim was to keep the US from intervening in any European war. This would buy the Kaiserreich the time to make a decisive strike against the Allies and claim her hegemony over the continent. Had the German Navy returned to unrestricted submarine warfare and claimed countless American lives, the Abwehr's efforts might have been in vain. But with no pressing need to side against Germany, proponents of American neutrality maintained control of Congress. President Wilson, re-elected in 1916 with a slogan of "He kept us out of war," was all too willing to steer clear of foreign entanglements. 1917 was a turning point in the war diplomatically, but also militarily. After 3 years of war, cracks had begun to show in the determination of Allied forces. Heavy French casualties at Chemin des Dames led to widespread mutiny among French troops. This disaster discourages the French High Command from continuing great offensives until the end of the year, giving Germany a chance to recover from the unmitigated catastrophe of the Brusilov offensive in the east. With both sides suffering more than 1 million casualties, the aftermath of this stunning and forward-looking offensive masterminded by General Brusilov was a pause in the Russian advance. The motherland simply had no further reinforcements to send, and further attacks were out of the question. The Central Powers, meanwhile, had taken careful note of the devastating use of carefully targeted artillery and small unit tactics with which Brusilov had found success. It was an approach which would now be turned against a Russian army which had exhausted itself. But even if German and Austro-Hungarian forces had not been preparing an assault, the Russian Empire's time was running out. A peasantry and working class furious about looming famine, military incompetence, and a lack of compassion turned their ire on Tsar Nicholas II. After riots, mass mutiny, and rebellion, the Tsar abdicates in March of 1917. A provisional government is formed under the brilliant lawyer Alexander Kerensky, but the young man's unstable reign is quickly snatched away by a new emerging faction, the feared Russian Bolsheviks, led by the enigmatic Vladimir Lenin. As the old guard of the Russian Empire and Kerensky's democratic forces form an unlikely alliance against the Red Menace, it is not long before the broiling conflict erupts in open war. The First Russian Civil War has begun. In Berlin, the news is met with delight. The Kaiser's decision to secretly assist Lenin's return to Russia has paid off, and the Bear to the east is mortally wounded. Offensives drive deep into Russia, and in March 1918, Germany signs the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with the secretly established Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. Swathes of lands that once belonged to the Tsar now answer to the Kaiser and to the Austrian Emperor. In Vienna, 1918 brings more for Emperor Karl to celebrate. The stalemate of inconclusive and bloody battles along the Isonza River comes to an end with the Caporetto offensive, beating the humiliated Italian army back to the Piave River. Only a heroic last-minute defense prevents the Austrians from taking Venice, and when the front line has settled, the Habsburg Emperor's armies are poised and ready for a fateful push into the Italian heartland. Success for the Central Powers is not universal. The Ottoman Empire, long derided as the sick man of Europe, proves incurable. After a series of devastating raids and attacks by the dashing Lawrence of Arabia across 1917, the Sultan slowly loses control of his precious railways, lifelines to Ottoman frontline soldiers. Chronically undersupplied and outmatched by Allied and rebel Arab infantry, the Ottoman army loses Baghdad and Jerusalem to British forces. Celebrations in London are short-lived. In December 1917, another blow to Allied morale rings a death knell for their relationship with the United States. On a routine patrol, a British submarine mistakenly torpedoes an American freighter carrying Christmas gifts to Germany, killing several US citizens. Seizing their opportunity, pro-German politicians in the United States move swiftly. Urging support for the Central Powers, the backlash they whip up forces Britain into a partial opening of the blockade, averting the looming spectre of famine in Central Europe. The opening of the blockade, combined with the relief of winning the war in the East, rallied German forces and set off a series of cascading events that would eventually spell doom for the beleaguered Allies on the Western Front. With Germany focused on the East, in the first half of 1918, the British and French realize that with American support no longer a reasonable expectation, the time to strike is now. At this stage in the war, the sides still seemed relatively even-matched, an assumption shattered by the outcome of the Allied Great Spring Offensive. After 3 months of fighting, not one of its objectives had been met, and an irrecoverable 800,000 casualties had been suffered by the Allies. The capitulation of Greece to Field Marshal Erich von Falkenhayn a month later buoyed German spirits further. With Russia eliminated and the Allies exhausted in the West, Germany has decisively claimed the initiative in the war. It is up to her to determine how to use it. She would do so in 1919. After spending the second half of 1918 biding time and redeploying forces from the Eastern Front, the German High Command begins its own great offensive, masterminded by Ludendorff. So-called infiltration tactics proved devastatingly effective, and the crucial railway hub of Amiens, the Allied headquarters, falls to Germany on the 26th of March. The British and French forces are now unable to supply one another, and even communication becomes difficult. On the 31st of May, the first short-distance artillery shots hit the capital, starting the siege of Paris. Ferdinand Koch is dismissed as supreme French commander and replaced with Philippe Pétain. A final blow is not yet delivered. The long-awaited Austrian offensive to knock Italy out of the war has stalled, and German forces are diverted to the southern front. While they will find success, Pétain and the defenders of France are granted a short operational respite. The British Army uses this time to attempt a fighting retreat to the Channel coast, hoping to withdraw safely to the United Kingdom. The Entente Cordiale is crumbling. As the hungry citizens of Paris begin to man the barricades once more, the desperate French leadership gambles everything on a counter-breakthrough in the Oise region. Miraculously, French tanks and cavalry divisions punch through the German lines, offering tantalizing hope. The lasting impact, however, is simply to delude the French High Command that a further offensive would have the same success. as she throws all remaining resources into an attempt to link up with the isolated British forces near the coast, France's luck finally runs out. The rear of the front collapses in the face of a German counterattack. It felt like their great offensive had come again, and soon we had no more shells to fire back. Unnamed French soldier, 1919. There are no more supplies coming. Unrest and rebellion in French cities has slowed war production to a crawl. Pétain advises against surrender, but the matter is taken out of his hands by the French army's old enemy, mutiny. With her army crippled, and with no other options, France requests an armistice with the German Empire. On the 4th of October, it is signed, both sides hurrying through negotiations. One condition is that on the 6th of October, the German army's victory will become unambiguous with a march through Paris itself. Gefreiter Andreas Koch watches from the Eiffel Tower as he and his men raise the flag of the empire that now unquestionably dominates mainland Europe. The Treaty of Versailles is signed a month later, punishing and humiliating the fragile provisional French government. Its people are still up in arms. The Third Republic was born with revolutionaries in Paris and German armies victorious on its soil. It dies in much the same fashion. From Dunkirk to the Dnieper River, the guns have fallen silent on a new German continent. However, just across the Channel, an Allied power remains. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, still confident in the might of her Royal Navy, refuses to come to terms. The stage is set for the Second Battle of Jutland, and the war seems far from over. To be continued.
Wait, they're listening with the audio on. The Kaiserreich Cinema crew proudly welcomes you to the world's first alt history webshop. We are a collective of artists, actors, and musicians who make alt history content on YouTube. All of our original work can be bought through the webshop, and every sale helps us create more free content.
My goodness, the Mad Cats actually did it! This is the first episode of our Kaiserreich documentary series, a massive project to detail the entirety of Kaiserreich lore from 1917 up to the start of the game mod in 1936. We had the backing of a great group list for this particular episode. Special thanks to Tom Black and Gabriel Flamefang Matsakis for the writing. Most of you will know Tom as the author of the world's first Kaiserreich novel, The People's Flag, which you can find on his Amazon store page. So make sure to swing by if you would like to support Tom and his work. Kaiserreich Cinema is a crowdfunded platform funded by the sale of merchandise and patron contributions. So consider swinging by their webshop and buying a poster or flag if you are a fan of our projects and would like to see more. We also want to thank voice actor Patrick Warner, who was selected by our community to be the voice of this documentary series. We are very excited to be working with such a talented voice actor. We want to especially thank our patron donors, whose monthly contributions allow us to keep continuing to produce this original content and music for the YouTube channel. Our patron contributors continue to rise, having quadrupled ever since March. Patrons of Cameo Cats tier and above can make cameo appearances in Kaiserreich Cinema art and animations. They also get access to free goodies, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, live streams, Zoom calls, and more. Special thanks to our biggest backer, John Thomas Justice. John, thanks for helping us out there, who you can see in the Kingfish poster here. Also thanks to our top backers, Sino Joe, Anthony, Wolfrunner, Isael, Alex Burchards, Kingfish58, and Lobster Man, and Devo. This month we are welcoming several new patrons to the crew. Matthias Hansen, Tobias Herzig, Jules Belia, J.R. Exner, Daniel Close, The Gamer, Charlie Acker, Peter Bacon, Deep Space, and Matthew Phillips. And massive thanks to all of you guys. So welcome to the Kaiserreich Cinema crew, and we hope to see you in the patron chat soon. That is all for now. Don't forget to subscribe and comment to let us know what you thought about this new Kaiserreich documentary series. Our next episode will detail the continuation war with Great Britain and the collapse of the British Empire, and be around the times 1918 through 1925, roughly. So let us know what you guys thought. We look forward to seeing you for the next episode, and I will see you for the next one, guys. Alright, we are back. Let me just put the music back on, put my thing back on. Are you guys still on Discord?
I'm still here.
Alright, on that we can sign
Right
back
here.
That went chuffing brilliant.
That was terrific. I love the music score as well.
Yeah, I think music
perfect.
added a nice little patch of dramatic
Yeah.
energy to it. So we will be taking a Q&A right now. If you guys have video on Discord, feel free to put it on. I'll be focused on the Patreon crew chat channel. We are joined by, and this is as you guys are seeing it on my screen, so not as everyone in this chat is seeing. We have Gabriel Matsakis, the co-author of this episode. We have Tom Black as Meadow, second co-author of this episode. Tom Black, also the author of The People's Flag. For everyone watching, Tom is an author. He has his own publishing company called Sea Lion Press, and he has written a book in Kaiserreich timeline called The People's Flag. Make sure to check it out on his Amazon store page for those that missed the part at the beginning. We have Yurizwe with us. We have Pedro Marbach with us. We have Sergeant Double with us. Svensk Muziekcultuur from our patron gang. We have Annette Unicorn with us, and then of course there is me. I will now be taking questions if you people have them for the crew. Aha!
I got my camera
What's up,
on.
Undead?
Just had to put a shirt on.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So these first few questions are for Tom and Gabriel, the authors. Is Tom Black going to write a book on the American Civil War?
I would love to do that, but I think, as I said actually just before in the Q&A, just before the thing, I don't have the kind of knowledge that I have about Britain, that I have about the US and its brilliant radical history, to do it justice. However, as I think Vincent kindly mentioned, there is a very chunky chapter in The People's Flag about the American Civil War, and in the sequel to The People's Flag, which I am now finally working on and want to get out at some point. Won't quite put a deadline on it because that'll come back to bite me.
I get that.
The sequel covers the Second Great War, as it's called in the world of the book, and the conclusion and next steps from the American Civil War will definitely be factored into that. And as in everybody's Kaiserreich games, or in most of them, the winner of that conflict and what happens next will play a big role in the Weltkrieg.
Flavefang, what are the plans for the second episode, Gabriel?
Well, we're looking at the period, as Vincent said just before, from roughly 1918, 1919 through to 1925. And one of the big challenges there is that a lot happens. So as you might know about real history after the First World War, there were a bunch of smaller conflicts that broke off and continued in the years after. The same thing happens in Kaiserreich's timeline, just in a different way. So we got to try and cover all those different things while still keeping to a coherent narrative. And then we've got the collapse of the British Empire in 1925, which is really, really crucial in Kaiserreich's lore. A lot of people talk about the POD in 1917, which we just covered in the episode, but 1925 is arguably even more important in a lot of ways, because it really signals the shift from the sort of old order of things to the new.
Yeah, I think that we'll definitely have a full episode dedicated to the collapse of the British Empire and what happens in the various stages, maybe even two. because I think like just Africa and Asia alone could be 2 separate episodes of 15 minutes each.
Yeah.
But I think we need to set that up first with the episode 2, which would be, I think, the rise of syndicalism. Syndicalism being a big ticket thing in Kaiserreich, I would definitely spend 15 minutes on that, like how it came to be in France and then eventually spread to the UK.
Yeah, definitely.
Tom, I've asked you and Gabriel to begin writing on the 2nd episode. Some people are asking when it will be out. These ones take quite some time to make. I will not be editing this new episode because I am appointing Pedro Marbach, who is in the middle here, with a little...
That's me.
What is that avatar icon? It reminds me of something.
Okay, you know Anastasia, the not Disney movie?
Yeah.
There is a copycat version that the villains are the Bolsheviks, and that's the villain.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that's a Russian, a Bolshevik, I guess.
Okay.
And I just think it's really funny, so that's my icon.
Amazing. So yeah, Pedro will be taking over from me as director of this project. He will be in charge of the animations, the map animations and the editing. As you guys have seen, we've used a combination of archival footage, manipulated photography, maps, as well as paintings from various sources from the First World War and the interwar periods. Just some questions that I'm going to answer in chat.
Is the picture, that guy Andreas Koch or whatever it was, is that a real person or is that a made up person?
That is an actual photo of a World War II German, but I photoshopped his costume to be World War One.
Right.
I'm not sure what the actual name is of the.
I can speak to that. Just for the deep lore fans out there, Andreas Koch is actually a shout out to someone who got me into modding a long time ago. He was a German guy who ran the mod team for Battlefield 1918, appropriately a World War I mod for Battlefield 1942. And when I was a very small teenager, he was the guy who inspired me to get into modding. So I thought I'd give him a shout out in the Kaiserreich world.
All right, I love that. It's some serious deep lore there. I think we'll be doing a lot of those references in the Divided States as well, because we have a lot of, obviously, like many of the side characters or cameo background characters are patrons, so there's deep lore there. I'm actually working on a scene right now. I was doing that today. The guys, those of you who are on Discord know this. This is Mr. Knowledge and Alexander piloting a custom Horton 235, which is a twin-seat variant of the Horton we came up with, which is used as a spy plane. So there's a really cool sequence that we're working on right now, which has these two patrons like being all badass, flying over Warzone, taking photographs. Anyhow. Homero Garza asks, do you consider the Divided States Animatic series as a one-of-a-kind series? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that question. I think what Homero asks is like, is it something new? I wouldn't say the idea of making animatic is new, but I've never seen anything quite like it done before, because I've been searching YouTube for like animatic series, and there's actually not many. You do have full animation series, right? So when like a YouTube collective, and these are usually like channels with over 1 million subscribers, and they just become a full animation studio. Think of like Rooster Teeth, I think, the red, white, and blue guys. But animatic is a step down from that, like smaller team, smaller budget, and that's basically what we're experimenting with right now. Yoav Kugan, just a couple of questions about World of Kaiserreichs. There will be a World of Kaiserreich Commune of France. The next World of Kaiserreich will be Scandinavia and then Russia. There's also some specific lore questions which I suggest you go to the Kaiserreich Discord for that, because it's beyond the scope of this live stream. We also have, let me see, scrolling down. NP Anthony, Tom, NP Anthony asks whether your book is available at Barnes & Noble.
I believe it is. It is available on their online store. I don't know if it's in any physical stores. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not.
I'm gonna check the People's Flag on back.
Yeah, you can actually. I did put it into the YouTube chat, and I'll put it back there for anyone.
It's on Barnes & Noble as well. I'll post it to the guys who are in the chat. So for those of you, Amazon. Are these the best places to buy them? Amazon and Barnes & Noble?
There is, to be honest, any of them, you know, it's up in various places legitimately. If you go to the there is here we go. There's a books2read.com link
All right, cool.
that I'll put into the chat. That has everywhere except Amazon, so it's everywhere it's available if for whatever reason you can't use Amazon.
All right, interesting.
And that includes Barnes & Noble.
Now that you're here, Tom, can you talk a little bit more about what got you into world history?
Sure. It was video games in the grand scheme of things. I was doing. I was playing a game called World War II Online, a massively multiplayer online first-person shooter. There aren't many of those. It's still going. Pleased to say. That had a big community, and just somebody mentioned that there was a series of books about aliens invading during World War II. And that is World War, the series that many of you I'm sure will be familiar with by Harry Turtledove, Legend of Alternate History. And I started reading those, and then I read his Southern Victory series, which is like the CSA wins the American Civil War, and then there's it goes up to the First World War and beyond. And I was just hooked, and so I was a teenager at that point. And then, funnily enough, the thing that really cemented my real interest in it was Hearts of Iron 2 mods, including Kaiserreich. And Kaiserreich and writing the People's Flag. 'Cause I actually wrote People's Flag getting on for 10 years ago. But it was 2010, 2011. That's why some of the lore is what it is. That really cemented my love of actually writing about it and stuff, and then gave me the confidence to start writing my own worlds now that I'd sort of used one that I'd been vaguely involved in making, but not directly.
Yeah.
And now, as you say, I do write my own stuff, largely Britain, largely politics focused, but I'm always looking for ways to try and do things that are a bit outside my wheelhouse. But yeah, I do.
So also want to give the microphone to Flamefang Gabriel, who is also a director with Kazgat Cinema. He is joining Pedro Marsbach and Jordan Pennell, as he is also heading up his own personal project. And now that you guys are here, I would like Flame to talk a bit more about Interlude that we're working on.
Sure, yeah. So working on something, as Vincent just said, called Project Interlude. And really what we're trying to do with this is take a look at all of the sort of smaller stories in the Kaiserreich setting that don't really get talked about that much. The histories of sort of the way the huge changes, from our timeline in the Kaiserreich timeline have affected how your average people sort of live their lives, and then use that to tell interesting stories within the setting. So we're going to have an episode of that coming out pretty soon. It's going to be focused or set in the legation cities, which, at least in my opinion, is definitely one of the most interesting sort of subsettings we have within Kaiserreich, because you just have so many different interests and dynamics coming together in one place. We've got a couple of pretty good voice actors coming together. We're going to have some visual work as well, which I think will really complement the audio nicely. But this was actually originally envisioned as a purely audio thing, kind of like a sort of like short audiobook episode. And then, of course, we're going to produce more. So we're hoping to go kind of around the world to different locations, peeking in on different aspects.
I'm actually going to put up some of the arts that we've been working on.
Yeah,
where is it? I think I have it here. Here we go. So let's see if I can get this on full frame. What we have right now are basically 4 frames. So the frame will switch every 2.5 minutes, but there's no animation. So it's basically Interlude will function like the Divided States with original illustration as a motion comic, not an animatic. The difference is subtle, but basically means less drawing and just like it's more of a slideshow, and every 2 minutes the slide may change. And it's all environmental pieces. We had these done by Saramenko Arts on Fiverr, so thanks. As you can see on the left side, we have Duncan. Can you tell us a little bit more about these characters, Gabriel?
Sure. So actually, the stream's a little bit behind, so I don't know if you're asking me to talk about just Duncan or all of them.
It's Duncan and Gluck sitting at a table, that frame.
So Duncan is the American Comprador, which is actually the name of this episode, possibly actually a little series focused on just him. And so what a Comprador is basically, historically, these were people that served as intermediaries between Western business interests and later Japanese business interests and native Chinese people, because after all these foreigners didn't always understand how business worked in China. They didn't understand Chinese even, and the Chinese didn't speak their languages. So it's kind of this intermediary role, and you have this interesting situation in Kaiserreich where, well, all the traditional sort of mediaries, mainly British, French people, all of their businesses kind of disappear with their defeat in the First World War, and then also with the British collapse in 1925. So you have this weird situation where suddenly excuse me, compradors are kind of necessary again at a time when historically they were kind of disappearing. So Duncan's kind of this figure who's been in China a while. He's a little bit of a con man in a way, in the sense that he kind of came in, he inserted himself, he saw opportunity basically to use his language skills, to use his connections to perform this role. Galuk is kind of almost a little bit of your sort of quintessential German officer, almost stereotype. He is a relatively recent arrival in the legation cities. He has a pretty high opinion of himself and what he represents, of course, the German Empire. So he sees himself as sort of a direct extension of the German state. He expects to be treated, as if he were representing the Kaiser himself in a way. And Duncan isn't really interested in that. So you'll see how that plays out in the actual script.
Yeah, we've done, if you guys cannot wait for the full episode release, we have a live script reading that we did with the voice actor Walter Lutsch. I think one of my favorite voice actors to work with. He also voiced World of Kaiserreich New England, World of Kaiserreich Hawaii, and now he's voicing Duncan as well. And I think he does really well with these like wise guy American style voices.
Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah,
he's really good at that.
We're actually thinking of doing a big project with him, the Max Steel project. But
have you got him like?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have him earmarked for. So for those of you who don't know, we have a couple conceptual projects. So usually we just give them a name and they're just an idea. Right now we don't have the crew to do that, but we would love to do like a Saturday morning style show where it's like a Captain America style character, very funny, like very lighthearted, something quite different from what we usually do. Who is like fighting, the syndicalists and the unionists in this really over-the-top B-movie 1950s cartoon style, like you would have these propaganda films. And we would frame it as, and now I need to think, because we're going back into deep lore. It would be written by and I forgot the name of the character. I wrote it myself. The World of Kaiserreich Hawaii guy. Jack Malone.
Smiling Jack Malone.
Smiling Jack Malone. After the Civil War in the 1960s, goes to Hollywood and becomes like a comic book writer or an animation writer, and then he writes this show in the 1960s. So it goes in between like him talking about his life, like his outrageous life, and the actual Captain Steel or Max Steel character, which would be like this funnier character. There's a couple of...
I think it's a brilliant concept. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to do it, but the problem we have right now is understaffing. So as you can see, we now have a nice little groups set up doing... let me see if I can get back to my... How do you switch back to... Oh, here we go, grid view. So now what we have is we have 4 teams working, right? We have the Divided States team, where I am the director. We have Interlude team, where Gabriel is director. We have Chomsky team, where I am stepping out of, and Pedro is becoming director. Then we have the Strife team with Jordan. So if we want an extra project, we need basically 4 or 5 extra guys. And that's definitely like, I need to do some calculus on that, because our budget is not that good. For us to start another project. So I think we should just focus on these 4 big projects right now. And I think we have a lot of really cool stuff lined up between Interlude, between New World of Kaiserreichs, between this documentary series episode, and then of course the Divided States Animatic. For those of you who are here watching the after release, I will show you a little bit of the trailer that we will release later in the summer. Just to have a little thing. I'm gonna watch it myself on my second screen first, so I want to make sure I don't show you guys anything I don't want.
What's this? Is this the Divided States trailer you're on?
Yeah, it's the one. It's the one patrons have already seen, the version 91 right now.
Yeah. That I can see. I like how, because I'm a Patreon, I can see how it's improving each time it's getting.
Okay, so there's a lot of. I'm just gonna show people. I'm not going to put the audio on because it's super cringe. Like, it's total cringe, guys. It's
you mean it's cringe? I love you doing all the voices.
You want me to put the audio on, like DM voice?
I think you should just keep it like that. In the actual production, you should do all the voices as well. It's brilliant.
We'll put the audio on, but like I'm not This is current progress on the Divided States trailer. Let me put the music off for a minute. 2,000 miles through a war zone. We'll never make it. So we're still casting the voice actors for all these roles.
The crisis in Wall Street has widespread economic collapse. The strikes have been growing in intensity all across the Great Lakes area. Many fear this to be a prelude to a wide-scale...
You are a good, loyal comrade, Michael. It's a mission only you can complete. Even the family, sir. I know you care for the girl. It doesn't change what we have to do to protect the revolution.
Anarchist bombing of the Chicago Board of Trade has left the building with extensive damage. The National Army has been mobilized. Field Marshal McAllister given unprecedented executive powers by a Congress held at gunpoint. McAllister has declared...
What the hell happened here?
The Germans happened.
All those people.
You two need to realize as long as they have this weapon, they will hunt us down. They will chase us to the ends of the earth. They will throw everything they have at us. The Legion Condor is ruthless.
Government troops, soundly defeated as syndicates have seized Chicago and declared the combined syndicate
Our
states.
chains are broken.
Reactionary force German Empire under central
Das Reich wird Kraft einsetzen, um die Stabilität in der Region zu gewährleisten.
All this death for a bomb? It's not just a bomb. I was there. I saw it. This will change everything. You have no idea what I've lost.
Everyone has lost people, Emily. You're not the only one who is entitled to pain.
Washington has fallen. A complete breakdown of central authority. Nationalist secession.
Analysts are calling it the Second American Civil War. God help us all.
Will you be a lousy scab, or will you be a man?
So that is what we're working on right now, the Divided States trailer. As you can see, about half the frames are painted. I've got a frame open right now. I've been working on these, this one as well as the destroyed St. Louis, I think, scene. Destroyed city from sky, is that it? Wrecked St. Louis drive-by. So all these shots are unanimated. So basically what these are, is the basic plates I'm sending to... Actually, I can put my music back on. The basic plates I'm sending to the animators. So Pedro, for example, is someone who animates, and what they get from me is a big Photoshop file that looks like this. So it has a bunch of different art assets on it, and then, for example, this car here. Let me just lock a few layers. This car here is going to... No, wrong. Okay. Ooh, it's really slow. I need to be careful when I open Photoshop while I'm live streaming because it puts a lot of strain on the system. But basically, this car is going to move this way. My goodness, this is slow. Right, and in the middle you see the car that our heroes are in. They are moving this way, and then there will be some slide animation of the background, which is all separated into layers. So as you can see, I can just go in here and pull this St. Louis skyline away. We've got airplanes moving in the distance. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff happening here. So that's most of the work that we're doing right now. We are also currently casting the voice actors as well. So, for example, here's, as you can see, that was all my voice, but now we are doing, this is Amy Seville casting for Emily.
What the hell happened here? What the hell happened here? What the hell happened here?
As you can see, that already feels a lot more like a woman, because I am not a woman, unfortunately. So what I'm doing when I'm sending these trailers, I'm sending these to the voice actors, and I'm doing this really shrill voice thing, where it's like, this is what you have to say, and it's really It sounds really like no. I'm serious, guys. Like this trailer is gonna be, I think, mathematically 1,000 times better once my voice is replaced with Emily's voice. Like I can do the scientist for a little bit, because then we have.
Again, I don't know what you're on about, Vincent. I think completely convinced him.
We've
should go into acting,
We've banned people for less on that. Anyway, we're just gonna go back to questions. Let's see. I think we are almost through most of our questions. It's like people really enjoyed the Vincent audio. I think what we should do is do like an unlisted video after each episode release where we show the episode, but it's me doing all the voices. I actually had an idea like this to do like a little bit more behind the scenes content with unlisted videos. There's a bunch of Kaiserreich questions here as well. I'm not sure if you want to answer those, Gabriel. So mod questions.
I'm happy to, sure.
Yeah. So Faisal asked, was there a planned rework for Sand France? I assume he means Nationalist France.
There's definitely things happening there. You might remember if you were in the Kaiserreich Discord maybe 6 months ago. there was some like teasers and things that were released, but I
was
don't
this the
know.
Morse code thing where you translate it and it's a picture of a guy that was some Vichy general or something?
Yeah, I think that's still work in progress stuff.
Right.
I mean, I don't work on that area in particular. I work on East Asia. That's kind of far away from where I work on. But my sort of knowledge of what's happening around me is that there's still work happening there. It's just kind of slow, and emphasis has shifted to some other areas more recently.
What are the plans for East Asia? I know we talked a bit during the Qing Empire live stream that you had plans for a future update.
Yeah, I mean, first off is Japan. I don't know when that's going to be coming, but Japan definitely needs some additional work. We added content to it to accommodate the China rework, but ultimately that was kind of a patch. That wasn't really, a fully fledged interaction with China and everything. So we're definitely going to rework that at some point when the right mix of people happens, people are freed up. We're definitely looking at post-unification content for China. We're looking at sort of reworking aspects of some of the trees, because as I see it, or as I hope others also see it, the China release, as in-depth as it was, is in many ways kind of a base for adding additional things.
Yeah,
for really adding more detail and more nuance and more ways things can turn out, and also, of course, balancing better.
There is a surprising amount of nuance already in the China. Like I just found out through Reddit post that there's this whole crime thing going on with where you can investigate different characters within the legation cities. So the legation cities have their. I really should play some of the minor countries. I haven't played Kaiserreich mod in a long time. But one of the cool things about the mod is obviously that the minor countries have so much love and detail to them. So can you talk a little bit more about the legation cities? Meaning, because we're already doing the interlude thing.
Yeah, so you mean about the legation cities in general, like what they are, or about what's coming?
How they play out, basically, in this new China rework.
So, yeah, the legation cities are in kind of an odd spot in that, Hearts Iron 4 is a war game, and they're kind of a faction that isn't really able to fight anybody because it's basically a collection of cities along the Chinese coast that are an international mandate. So it's a little bit like, I don't know, the European Economic Community when that was a thing. Not the EU, just the economic aspect, like declaring war on somebody. I mean, it's kind of bizarre. So what we decided to do with the legation cities is basically try to make it as much of a kind of role-playing, story-driven experience as possible. And so we do have these investigation things where, there was a lot of crime happening in the legation cities. That was a huge part of it. A lot of shady stuff, a lot of interesting political intrigue, a lot of radical factions moving sort of in the underground. And you have, of course, this conflict playing out between the Germans and Japanese in the Far East. So you can investigate these different characters. You can take multiple choices as to what you want to do with them. And that can impact what choices you can make, and in theory, what choices other factions might make as well. We're actually looking at adding more content to legation cities in the future that's more interactive with the tags around it. So there should be more of that to come.
So because legation cities aren't big militarily, maybe they can be more of an economic factor. There's the cities that are in there are fairly big, even in the 1940s.
Absolutely, yeah. So the idea is that other factions do want to establish some level of control over them, which plays a factor in how they make their own decisions in East Asia. What I'd personally like to see is some more Chinese warlord factions able to try to get certain things out of the legation cities, make deals with them to get what they want, to maybe get some things the legation cities want as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that.
Something I always found interesting was the reason Russia doesn't get a vote in the legation council is because Transamur exists, and it's disputed. And I was just thinking, is there any stuff about maybe Russians and Transamurians? How do they get along, if at all, in the legation cities? Just out of curiosity.
It's an interesting question in that it's something we haven't thought that much about. I imagine that, no worries. I mean, it's something interesting to consider. I mean, historically, white Russians were a major part of the legation cities. Yeah. They're not as prominent in this timeline because they didn't all have to flee the Soviets. But there's definitely some Russians there, probably more Transamurians than Moscow Russians. I'm not sure what regular Russians, but Kerenskyites, yeah, whatever you want to call them. There's probably fewer of them just because they don't have the direct contact in the same way.
I really love Transamur. It's probably one of my favorite countries. Do they fall under East Asia? Do they fall under your sort of area?
Yes, kind of. They're in a weird spot. Usually they fall under my purview because they're considered part of the prosperity sphere. But when it comes to the Russian aspect of them, I defer to people that know about Russia.
Right, fair enough.
To pivot back to Chomsky for a minute, so we're going to do another 15 minutes of the live stream, just talking a little bit about the production of the show. Not taking QA anymore. I think we've solved most of the questions. So if you guys want to hang out, if you guys want to log off, that's fine by me. This next part will be me and Pedro basically talking about the animation aspects of it rather than the lore. And then 15 past midnight in European time, or 15 past Flame, what's the time? Yours?
Right now it's 5:51.
5:51. Okay, so it's 6:15 p.m. US East Coast time, or 5:15 Chicago time, or damn it, I'm getting close to like memorizing all the time zones, but it's not fully there. Pedro, are you with me?
Yep, right here.
All right, cool. Let's break this thing down frame per frame. So you will not be seeing my screen because you'll be on a bit of delay. You'll have to make sure you have the live stream pulled up to the second thing. So for Chomsky, what we did is we used a combination of maps, archival footage, paintings, and edited photographs. So this is an example of a map, and the map we're using are actually the Rusky maps, which you can see on the web shop. We inverted them, so we basically made them night mode. And then you animated them, Pedro. Can you talk a little bit about the animation?
So for example, when it comes to animating the occupied zones, whenever, for example, the dark part of the map takes over the France, Belgium, Italy, for example, it was basically a matter of making that selection around the territory that will be occupied and painting them of the proper color and correcting all the little lines that would maybe mess up with like the rivers and stuff.
Yeah.
Making that a separate layer so that I could animate them separately on After Effects. I would mask them out and like shrink the mask to almost invisible, and then advance a few frames and boom, grow it to its full size.
Yeah, it looks good. I think one of the things that we also use, and this is something you see in our trailer as well, we use After Effects wiggle and position, and basically what that is, it is in an effect that very, very slightly moves the frame, and that is what creates the projector feeling of it. So we use a couple of effects. We have some old slider, we have the projector playing in the background, and then everything is just very slightly shaking, and that gives you the idea that you're looking at some sort of old slideshow. As well as a very strong camera blur that we have. So as you can see, Paris comes down, and then we actually go into some edited maps that I made of Paris of World War II, because I could not find World War I's, and then I edited out some of the World War II front lines.
So I was gonna ask, those maps you made, then those cool, stylish maps there.
Yeah, they're not made by me. They're just basically front maps from various conflicts that fit, and then I inverted them. That's mostly what I did, and it's what gives Chomsky that unique look. Oh, I also added a bit of texture, like there's a bit of Photoshop work in there as well. Some of the archival footage you guys are seeing right now comes from 1964 and a 1955 BBC documentary, I think. And there's also quite a lot from the US National Archives. This really cool animation is Syndicalist gear animation on the newspapers. Those are templates that we bought from Creative Market. So as you can see, it creates this nice little newspaper effect. And I thought it would be very cool for a dramatic intro. And then this is Pedro's part, the part where Germany sort of infects Europe. And then you have the big German cross appearing, which I think is a really cool sequence, as well as the music. Like the intro makes it very powerful. I'll play it full. So here we're on the frame with the German flag over Paris right now, Pedro. Basically there you see that is an edited flag from World War II, from the World War II occupation, and we have a couple of those in there. Then we have some more newspapers. What's cool is we comped in, here's a photo animation by Pedro. The first one with the German officer in the intro giving, I think it's Ludendorff, it's very hard to see, this is a very blurry picture. He has a Pickelhaube on and he's giving a speech to men.
I think that one is Hindenburg, actually. I think.
Is that? Yeah.
It's that footage is actually from after the First World War.
Yeah.
You can see some swastika flags in the back, like not in that picture right now, but in the rest of the picture you can see it.
Oh, okay, that's why it's cropped that way.
So it's probably from Weimar Republic.
So here's a few more animated photos. So I think that's sort of creates a nice little breakup. We have animated photos, we have the archival footage, we have the little photo sliders going on. This is a map of transatlantic shipping in the 1940s, World War II again, but we're reusing it for World War I. I think one of the biggest problems we're running into right now is that it's hard to find good World War I footage, right? That's not copyrighted. It's extremely difficult. And maps, because World War II is has a lot more media to it. Obviously, there were many more photo and video cameras around that in the 1940s. But yeah,
but I was gonna say the problem that I found out while doing this research when it comes to these copyright-free footage is that it just means that anyone can sell it, not that you can find it anywhere for free. So you can find a lot of websites that sell footage for ridiculous prices.
Yeah, it's really expensive. We had multiple contacts with several footage, but it's just like it's not even within the range of what's reasonable for us right now. Yeah. It's just so much beyond budget of what we have.
To give like some of the watchers example, I found this website that is, for example, 5 minutes of French front footage, $140.
Yeah, something like that. Like it would make the entire documentary like more than $2,000 just for the footage. Like that's not even the work we've done. So we've got all these newspaper archives moving past. We've got some footage. This is all stuff that you comped in, Pedro. It's really cool. I found some really nice high-resolution photographs of the US President Wilson, which I'm very happy about. And some of these leaders have very good online photograph sources to work with, but not always.
Yeah, I was surprised with the pictures that you sent me to animate. They're all very high quality.
Yeah, they weren't. I'm using Gigapixel AI. It's like a program I bought that upscales things. So if you look very closely, and we'll show a bit of that. I'm scrolling through to those pictures right now. A lot of those were really, really small, like less than 1,000 pixels, and then we upscaled them 2 or 3 times.
Ah, cool.
And the results are definitely really good. You can see it a bit if you look closely at the pictures, but for these purposes, it's definitely really good. So here's a picture that we upscaled. If we scroll a bit forwards, there's definitely a couple more. Here's one that we upscaled, especially with art. It's really good because you can find a lot of those old art sources which do not have good scans of them. So it's going to be a really small thumbnail image that's not usable. If you put gigapixel on it, it will see where the oils are, and it will sort of try and replicate that. It's just one of those many ways that we're looking in, like using modern technology in Kaiserreich cinema. I think one of the other ways is, for example, Emily's face design is a collaboration between me and the YouTuber BabyZone, who some of you might know. What BabyZone does is he does deepfake videos. So he trains a neural net on actors' faces and puts them into video games. And what he did is he did this really cool Julia Voth mix. So Julia Voth is a Canadian actress, I think, who plays Jill in an old Resident Evil movie. He took some of her younger photos, mixed those with Jill of the newer Resident Evil remaster, and it had this really cool particular face. And I saw that video, and I was like, I gotta talk to this guy. And I sent him an email. I was like, hey, BabyZone. And so it turns out he's French, so we were bantering for a bit. And he sent me, I sent him like a 3D model of a basic woman in several angles, and then he put the deepfake AI. Actually, I think I can show it. He put the deepfake AI on it, and it basically created what is essentially a fictional person with some features of Jill Valentine and some features of Julia Voth. And then I worked on that to create a drawing reference for Emily. And I want to see if I can get
cool.
Emily portraits. Let's see, Emily portrait reference 2020. July 2020 would be our most recent. Let's see where she is. And this is not the correct one. Years. Or is it called master reference? Emily master. Emily master reference. Yeah, I think it's called master. Always sorting through my files. Okay, here we go. I think this is the right file. No, still not the right file. I don't have the exact images on me right now, but basically we use a combination of art, animation, a little bit of AI. What we came up with is this concept drawing Emily July. This is her latest, no, not the latest. I have too many. This is her latest design. So this is what Emily is going to look like in the divided states. We've adapted her clothes a little bit, so she has both historical and some ahistorical elements, like her pants are really fitted, which is not possible in the 1940s, but we thought it was a really cool look, so we gave her a sweater and a mass rifle, and I think the mass rifle and the pants are the most like old historical elements that we have on her. And then this really distinct hairstyle, and then that face, that's a combination of my own design and various other like things we mixed in that I think are really interesting. You can also see her in the Divided States poster we're selling on the web shop, as well as the many of the dialogue tests we've been doing. You can see some of these shots in the trailer. And we're just experimenting with a lot of stuff that I think is really cool, and we're using it in the Kaiserreich documentary as well as in the other ones. With that being said, we have about 10 minutes to go until the actual release of Chomsky on YouTube. So I suggest at 6:15 Eastern time that we cut off the live stream. So we'll be taking some final questions, and then once we're done here, we'll all move to the I'll stay in the Discord chat, but we'll move to the we'll cut the live stream off and move on to the what's it called, YouTube Premiere thing, the chat box.
Yep.
Alright, so we have a couple more drawing-ons. This is the second point of divergence, something that is not often talked about. It is the torpedoing of an American freighter by the British instead of the Germans. And I think together with unrestricted submarine warfare and the collapse of the British Empire, these are the 3 points of divergences. Points of divergence? The 3 PODs where Kaiserreich has been built around. And maybe, Gabriel, you can say a little bit more about that.
Gabriel left.
Oh, he left. Okay, cool. Yeah. So it's just you and me, Pedro. Let's see who's still in the Discord. It's Pedro, Grayson. Yeah. Okay. So the writers actually left. Actually, then we won't be answering any more lore questions. I suggest we just cut the live stream here and we go up to the "What if Germany won World War I?" Live premiere, and I need to make a couple of posts. Other than that, I think we are good, guys. If anyone has some final questions, I will end the live stream in 5 minutes. I'm going to post the link to the premiere, showing us there, and that will be it. All right, going to cut off my camera as well. Looks like my battery died. It's the camera saying it's time to end the live stream. Cutting off camera. We're still live for a couple more minutes. I'm gonna see if any final questions come in from the live chat. Other than that, I'm going to tell everyone to move to the Kaiserreich Universe Lore world premiere on YouTube. There we go. Alright, guys. Nicholas asks one final question. How are you, Vincent? I'm doing excellent, Nicholas. I'm pretty hot right now because it's a fairly warm day in Belgium. These lights on me, so I'm glad actually the camera is off, so I'm gonna switch to a lighter shirt. One of the disadvantages of this Kaiserreich cinema shirt is fairly heavy cotton, so it's definitely not something you want to wear in summer on set. So I actually need to re-engineer a better crew shirt, like whenever we're... because my god, this is a hot shirt. Oof. I'm actually flapping my shirt right now to cool myself a little bit. Alright, that seems to be the final question that we have for tonight, so I suggest we call it there. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Make sure to move now to the premiere of the video, the live chat. That's where I will be. Homero, I live in Flanders, close to the city of Antwerp, so in the northeastern side of Flanders. And that's it. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and wishing all you guys a very